But let's get into our next discussion now. Adequate power supply is a key factor needed to unlock the economic potential of any country.
Well, the sector remains strategic in reducing the cost of doing business and adversely affecting the living standard of all Nigerians. But Nigeria still struggles to provide adequate power for its citizens.
Now, the manufacturing sector in Nigeria, despite its huge potential, lies in a state of near comatose because of poor power supply. And that sector of the economy could contribute substantially to the country's GDP and provide employment for a teeming population of unemployed Nigerians. But the power supply is a serious challenge.
Indeed. Well, experts have said Nigeria has the capacity to generate about 12,000 megawatts of power. But achieving this feat seems impossible at the moment, as rather than improve, power generation continues to decline on almost a daily basis. And joining us now is Comrade Abadom Amechi. Is in the studio, and he is a labor activist and, of course, the deputy chairman of Campaign for Democratic and Workers' Rights. Good morning to you, Comrade, and thank you for joining us on the show.
Good morning.
So how worrisome is it really that at this day and age we are still talking about poor power supply in Nigeria despite the privatization effort?
Yeah, it's actually a serious problem. The story of electricity generation in Nigeria is a case of motion without movement. If you remember that in 1999, when PDP came to power, we were told that our capacity then was 6,000 megawatts. And then we also promised that in 2 years, or less than 2 years, they will raise it up to 10,000. And a lot of power stations were developed, IPP, NIPP, and all that. And as we speak, so many of them are not working. Some are just partially working. And I think I saw on social media about a few days ago where somebody was trying to celebrate that we are raising our capacity to about 6,000. And that's after 17 years. And that was what it was supposed to be in 1999. So it's a case of motion without movement. If you look at advanced Western countries, you find out that majorly their economies are driven by private sectors. And if you look at the private sectors, you also find out that the major employers of labor, even within the private sector, are the medium and then the small scale businesses. Today in Nigeria, if you want to run a business as small as a salon, barbing hair salon, you have to generate electricity for yourself. And you find out that manufacturers are generating electricity for themselves. And the global trend these days is that businessmen, entrepreneurs should concentrate on their core areas. For instance, if I'm producing tomato, I don't have to go into the business of generating electricity. It takes away my focus from my main business area. But today you have to generate electricity, and electricity generation is business on its own. And it's capital intensive, and it requires expertise. So it's not something, but here in Nigeria today, you have to set up your plant and then also generate electricity. And so the impact on the economy, on the growth, is very, very adverse. And of course, studies have shown that there's a relationship or correlation between power generation and economic growth. And so, because where there's constant power supply, that will kind of create excitement in the economy. And then you see artisans and technicians start being creative. You understand? So, but today, if you see most of the artisans are idle. Even sometimes you see them playing in their workshop. But if there is constant supply of electricity, you begin to think. Somebody told me that in China, for instance, you don't need a big company to produce electric motor. You just need a small shop. And all I have to do is to get a foundry shop that will cast the housing for me. And I'll take the housing to my workshop, a small workshop, where I have my machines, the lathe, milling, and all that. And I do all the necessary machining. And then do the winding and then the coupling. And you see them bringing these things into Nigeria. You think that there are very big companies that are producing these things. So when there is constant electricity supply, it creates creativity. People become creative. They know what to do. But today, even the ordinary citizens, the energy we need in our homes, we need to generate. Of course, for the past 2 weeks, I've stayed in my area without light. So people need to generate, and the industries also. Last year alone, of course, if you see the MAN report, it's frightening. companies that had to close shop, some downsized, some closed outrightly, and some
Especially
relocated.
SMEs.
Yeah, you know. So some relocated because of this issue of electricity. And then it's a country that is producing a lot of graduates, bringing up young people.
So many electrical engineers.
Yes, and then
and we talk about expertise and skills. But let's talk about, there's a new dimension now where companies that are operating in the power sector, the generating companies, the distribution and all of that, they keep blaming each other. Gencos blaming Discos for not, or transmission companies for not evacuating, and the others blaming the other one for not, Discos blaming TCN for not, and so on. How complicated, how is that complicating or compounding the situation Nigerians are facing?
Well, the way I see it, I think there's an interplay of business interests. You can't rule that out. But if we want to be very sincere, the Electricity Workers Union, ably led by Joe Ajero, there was a time they raised series of issues, militating against these things, and then they tried to advise government. So Ajero and his men, they are on ground. They know what is actually going on. They know what the problems are. And they've advised all the critical stakeholders. And so they know what to do. And I think if they follow those advices, they will do well. But I think the blame game, I see them sometimes trying to, especially the distribution companies, saying that Nigerians are not paying for the cost of consumption and all that. I think that is not proper. That's not real. Even Nigerians are paying for what they are not using. For instance, for a company that is into production, and in the process of production, light goes off, you can be sure that all the products trapped that period, they are going to be defective. That's a loss to the company. And then maybe some days too, there won't be light and they'll have to run on generator. Again, PAC and whatever their name is now, they will still send a bill, estimated bills to people. In my area, I said we've not had light for the past 2 weeks. People are still going to get bills. So people are paying for what they are not using. So I think essentially now what they need to do is to provide meter. The metering is very, very important so that Nigerians can pay. I'm not going to support that people use energy without paying for it. Nigerians should be able to pay. But it's not the duty of Nigerians to provide the meters.
Exactly.
They have to provide the meters so that when you give out electricity to people, if you supply them electricity, they will pay the exact amount of the quantity of electricity that they consume.
All right, you said something quite interesting a while ago, that there is a strong connection between power generation and economic development.
Yeah.
And I thought at that point, I thought about the amount of money Nigeria would have been able to generate if, for example, there is close to 24 hours generation of electricity, because in the past, Lagos used to be known as a city, that doesn't sleep. But imagine if all states in the country were experiencing 24 hours power generation, different businesses would be able to operate at night and not even in the day. The amount of employment and all that. So is it so difficult, really? Because at a point, Nigeria, even though Nigerians were not getting power supply, but they were supplying some to neighboring countries.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it about, like you said, exactly, is it about, apart from selfish interests now, but about making a mistake from the get-go? Because power keep changing hands. The control of power generation companies in Nigeria keep changing hands, but things do not get better. Trillions of naira have been spent, but nothing. So is it about selfish interests, really? But somehow it's a problem that has got beyond comprehension. I don't want to say human comprehension, but Nigerian comprehension, sort of.
Yeah, I think the people that have actually managed that sector, in a way, they've actually done a lot of disservice to Nigerians, because I don't think that it cannot work better. If it has worked better in some other climes, some other countries, there's no reason why it cannot work well here. And also, government policy also has not really helped matters as well. There must be sincerity of purpose. In some other places, if you set up a community, for instance, and you say there are only 100 people, and you look at the equipment you are going to use to generate electricity for them, you also factor into your plan that in the next 5 years, the population of this community will grow beyond 100, probably 300 or 400, and then you need to upgrade. You understand? So over the years, we were growing, industries were springing up, our populations were growing, but you find out that they were not upgrading the systems. I think yesterday I discovered that for years or for some time, even the Afan power station was not operating optimally. At a point, it shut down completely. So these are serious issues. But the truth of the matter is that if you have a situation where there's constant power supply up to the required amount of power supply that we need to operate as a nation, it will actually kind of impact on the growth of the economy. Like you rightly said, a lot of businesses will come on live, and then people start doing so many things. As I said before, entrepreneurs, technicians, artisans start being creative. We create a lot of, there will be employment, and they will start producing. You find out that some of the things they are bringing into this country, you don't need to bring them because people definitely will have to produce those things, and then they'll be taken to neighboring African countries. Of course, a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa are looking up to Nigeria for provision of so many things. And so if we fail, the countries around us also are definitely going to fail.
In fact, a lot of people have said that because Kainji Dam transmits energy to several West African countries and neighbors. And they say, and a lot of people said, if Nigeria is not having constant light, how are you giving light to energy to other people when you don't even have it?
What you don't have.
You're giving out what you don't have, and all of that. But let's go back to the other issue. Some persons have said that the main problem was the way the privatization was carried out. It is not wrong to say government is removing its hands from the concept of power or ownership and running so that private hands can be more efficient. But at that point, what would they have done? Some analysts said it was even best to have listed the company at the stock exchange so that the workers there can own the company. They work there, they know the workings, they know everything. They should have owned it and used it to work for the benefit of the country.
Yeah, that is actually the position of Electricity Workers Union. That the manner the privatization was carried out wasn't really proper. Even the 10%, I think there was this agreement that 10% of the shares or equity should be given to workers. I'm not sure. I think they are still complaining about that. I saw all that, the people, all their complaints. I think I read it somewhere. I found out that it has not really been addressed. So the way the privatization was carried out, it has not really helped to actually properly position that sector. And I don't know whether government will still go back to revisit that issue. And I think it's very, very important that government will revisit that. But looking at the Kanji, like you mentioned earlier, I think the case of Kanji is because, Kanji is a dam. And then I think somehow there was an agreement that countries like Niger Republic should not be allowed to build dam along the Niger. If you have a dam at the upper Niger, it will affect the flow of water.
Exactly.
So it was on that agreement that if you don't build your dam, we'll let us operate our own, then we'll give you light. It is not because we have enough. And I think that's responsible for that. But at the same time, even if you look at the Kanji, it's a hydro station. I think in terms of capacity, I don't think it produces as much as Egin. You understand? So that's not even our problem. Our problem is that what we have, we are not able to manage it.
I'm talking about managing power generation well, it seems the country is incapacitated because analysts have talked about dilapidated structures, outdated structures, especially the ones handled by the government-owned arm of the electricity generation companies, the TCN. Those are the transmission companies owned by the government, that they have dilapidated structures, they're outdated, and nothing is done. That when power is generated, the capacity to even carry the load and load it off to discos is not there. So really, where does the blame lie? With the private companies, Gencos and distribution companies, or the one owned by the government, TCN?
I think, it's a problem because generation, transmission, distribution, there are three phases of power business. Yeah, if you generate electricity, you are faced with a challenge. The challenge is how do you move the electricity from the point of generation to where it can be distributed. So, and then I think that shouldn't be a problem of Nigeria. I think that should be, because there are now people that are operating in that sector now, they are being into business. And so it is their responsibility to ensure that they upgrade their equipment such that even if there are going to be losses, definitely there will be losses, because in engineering you cannot have a system where your output is equal to your input. It's not possible. So definitely there will be energy losses. Even in doing transmission and distribution, there will be energy losses. But if you have very good equipment, definitely you will reduce the energy losses. But like you said, the rate at which we lose energy from the point of generation to the point of distribution is so high. So that also is another problem in that sector. So I think that shouldn't really be, I think that should be the problem of the people who operate in that sector. They are into business, and so it's their responsibility to make sure that they use the best equipment.
All right. Well, we are we're pressed for time now, but let me ask you this before we go. What's your projection like? When you sit and look forward to what the way government is going about the power and energy related issues and all of that, what hope, how optimistic are you that light will be on ground in the nearest future?
Well,
I guess that's a difficult one.
It's a difficult one, but I think it will be preposterous for me to be pessimistic. So I want to believe that, looking at the efforts being made, probably in the next 1 year, we should be able to raise it up to 7, 8, but not 10. I don't believe it will work.
Because the minister was saying that about 6,000 is being generated
so
currently.
Far.
Of course, that was what somebody was celebrating some 2 days ago.
And of course, experts have said that it is rainy season.
Yeah,
rain is still falling, so
when
it
the water
shouldn't
levels are high.
The water level is high, and we're just generating
course.
6. So
During the
So
dry season,
let's
you know,
wait
the
until
actual capacity
November,
to generate.
December,
Yes.
January, where there is no rain, there we get to know, okay, did you work hard or it was just the rain or soaring on the wings of the rain? All right, Comrade Abadom Amechi, Labour activist and Deputy Chairman, Campaign for Democratic and Workers' Rights. Thank you so much for coming on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.